the foreign policy of the Biden government suddenly takes an unexpected turn. There was one case where the U.S. provoked India, an ally of Quad, for no reason. On April 7, USS John Paul Jones had carried out a freedom of navigation operation in the west of Lakshadweep Island in India's exclusive economic zone without requesting India's prior consent. India was furious that the U.S. Navy was conducting military exercise without notice, even though the U.S. would have been able to give advance notice, especially since India is an ally of the U.S. against China. India responded by saying the U.S. Navy's move was a violation of Indian sovereignty and warned that it could adversely affect the Quad alliance.
India also said that India was continuously monitoring the movement of the US Navy ship from the Persian Gulf to the Straits of Malacca. And remember, the violation has just not happened to the Indian exclusive economic zone. The Americans have also violated the exclusive economic zone area of Maldives as well. But the big breaking right now is the Indian government has officially reacted to the development and has raised its concerns to the Americans, and any country has exclusive rights to use the resources, but India has a domestic law under which any military vessel which is passing has to notify New Delhi, which of course clearly was not done, and this was mentioned in the press release. So there's a clear violation of Indian domestic laws by the American naval ship.
During the Trump administration, the U.S. Navy informed the Indian government in advance if they were conducting a military exercise in Indian waters, thereby gaining trust. And that's why India indicated that this was incomprehensible to these measures by the Biden government. But even more surprising was that the US Navy immediately issued a statement refuting India's position and accusing India of attempting to provoke a feud between New Delhi and Washington. In a statement, the US Navy outlined its position. This freedom of navigation operation upheld the rights, freedoms, and lawful uses of the sea recognized in international law by challenging India's excessive maritime claims.
Then within its exclusive economic zone was conducted with against normal operations and all consistent with international law. This is again part of our responsibility, really, to uphold the freedom of navigation and the rights and freedoms of lawful uses of the sea recognized in international law. Everybody, when we talk about freedom of navigation operations, we all tend to get focused on, well, it's against a nation state. It's not against a nation state. It's for a principle, and we do it all around the world. It's not just something that we tend to talk about it in regards to China and their excessive maritime claims, but it isn't all just about China. It's something we do not against something, but for something, and we do it all around the world.
For these reasons, India considered the actions of the Biden government to be intentional and not as a mistake. India also argued that, unlikely from China's illegal construction of a man-made island in the South China Sea and claiming sovereignty over the surrounding waters, India's Lakshadweep Islands are different because they are naturally formed islands. And India says that the United Nations law of the sea does not allow the military training in the exclusive economic zones of other countries. In addition, India and the US even formed the Quad against China, which is why India said it couldn't understand how the US suddenly provoked its allies in this way. During the Trump administration, India welcomed the US, Japanese, and Australian navies to exercise in its waters, and China repeatedly blamed them for doing so. China has long denounced the lack of core values that India and the US military alliance brought with them. Therefore, India accused the US of being in the line with China's propaganda for its unexpected behavior and accused the Biden government of betraying the Quad alliance. However, there is another inconsistency in the Biden government's attitude toward China. It is the boycott of the 2022 Winter Olympics in Beijing. On April 6 at early morning, U.S. Department of State spokesman Ned Price had suggested during a press briefing that, A boycott of Beijing Olympic Games was among the possibilities for addressing China's human rights abuses. However, within hours, U.S. changed their position. On same-day evening, the State Department denied that U.S. was considering a joint boycott alongside allies of the 2022 Winter Olympics in Beijing. A senior State Department official emailed to the CNBC that our position on the 2022 Olympics has not changed. We have not discussed, and we are not discussing any joint boycott with allies and partners. Also, 1 day later, on April 7th, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said that the White House is not looking at the boycott of the 2022 Olympics. She said, "We have not discussed, and we are not discussing any joint boycott with allies and partners." Also on February 25, Jen Psaki said, "There is no final decision on the Beijing Olympic. We will seek advice from the U.S. Olympic Committee." Meanwhile, China is strongly opposed to the U.S. boycott of the Beijing Olympics. China's Global Times editor Hu Xijin made his position on Twitter. Boycotting 2022 Beijing Winter Games won't receive the wide support. IOC and athletes will both oppose it, and China will seriously sanction any country that follows such a call. China's Foreign Ministry spokesman Zhao Lijian also said that the international community will not tolerate the U.S. attempt to boycott the Beijing Olympics. The U.S. has not shown a definite stance on the Beijing Olympics, and China continues to show unpleasant feelings about the Olympic boycott. And these are the reasons why criticism of the actions and decisions of the United States continues, as the strongest power in the world is not taking serious steps and instead is turning like a flag in the wind. Although the U.S. pretends to be tough on China, it continues to change its position according to the situation. Several Indian media outlets had also accused the Biden government of being bullied by China, pointing out that such behavior could jeopardize U.S. alliances. A lot of the allies are now calling for the U.S. to take action against China, but are frustrated that the U.S. is merely appeasing and turning around depending on the situation like a flag in the wind. What stood out and shocked many was that Blinken and Sullivan were only attacked by Yang Jiechi and Wang Yi at the last meeting in Alaska, but did not raise any arguments against them. Yang Jiechi's wife and daughter are known to own luxury buildings in Washington, D.C. Yang Jiechi's wife, Lei Aimei, has lived in Washington, D.C. since 2001, and her registered residence is valued at $8.12 million. Yang Jiechi's daughter, Alice Yang, has lived in New York since 2010, and is said to have bought a riverside apartment for $1.77 million earlier this year. Alice Yang graduated from university in the United States but is not yet returning to China. Since both Yang Jiechi's wife and daughter live in the United States and they own expensive real estate, his public prosecution against the United States was very risky. But Yang Jiechi seems like doesn't care about the problem and only spoke to the U.S. about what China wants. For example, don't cross the red line. More and more demands are coming from China against the U.S., and therefore people cannot understand the attitude of the U.S. toward China. Also on the Indian Pacific issue, the Biden government claims it has a strong stance toward China, but its behavior is causing more and more allies to lose the trust they have in the United States, and this trust grows. The U.S. brought Japan and Australia into the Quad to put pressure on China. In the event of an incident related to Taiwan and China, the U.S. is simply saying that it will continue to adhere to the principles about Taiwan but not taking any action. The Quad allies are comprised of Japan, Australia, and India, but they have a stronger stance on defending their values than the United States currently does. When it comes to China-related issues in Taiwan, Japan is the country most at risk. Geographically, Japan's island region is the next most vulnerable area if China invades Taiwan. Several islands on the southern tip of Okinawa would become China's military target, and Senkaku Island would be threatened immediately. For this reason, Japan regards Taiwan's fate as a common or shared fate. To avoid this, however, the US would have to become more active so that the Japan's self-defense forces could intervene in an attack on Taiwan. But Japan can only take independent military action if it cooperates with the United States on the basis of the 1950 US-Japan Security Treaty. On April 4th, Japanese Prime Minister Saga Yoshihide mentioned this issue. He said that without the US, Japan cannot take its own military action to repel China's attack on Taiwan unless it is a direct attack by China on Japan. Also, there is practically no official US defense commitment to Taiwan. In fact, Taiwan's Defense Minister Chiu Kuo-cheng said US support is not certain when China poses a military threat to Taiwan, because he knew that the US has no obligation to protect Taiwan if China attacks it. The approach taken by the Biden administration is very different in every aspect from the Trump administration regarding China, which is why it is widely criticized. When the Biden government provoked India with its sudden exercise, the most important value, mutual trust between the allies, was shaken and has been called into question ever since. The foreign policy of the Biden government shows an inconsistent attitude, which is interpreted worldwide as a weakness. What do you think of this video? Thanks for watching, comments, likes, and sharing. Be safe.